Alrighty. Do-do-do. Let's just see if that sounds okay. I think it does. My God. Apologies for the silence there. I had to make sure in studio that everything sounded okay because last time I tried this, everything went terrible. That's why you never saw it. Statistically speaking, you never saw it anyways. One moment. There we go. Oh boy, what are we doing today? Well, I had to cancel some plans, so instead of that, I'm going to try and paint this Warhammer in the same style as this Locust that I painted yesterday. In case you're not aware, this is the style of the Lyran Guards. Just a nice 2-to-1 of blue and white. And honestly, I'm not going to waste any time. We're going to hop straight into it. So, just after I click a certain thing on my web browser. Apologies. Boop. My God. All right. So, the first thing I'm going to do is actually get this base taken care of. I like to do the texturing on the base first, because if I mess that up, no biggie. But if I'm at the end of painting the model, painting the base, and then I get a whole bunch of crap on the nice paint job of the mech, I tend to get a little upset. So let's go ahead. I'm going to, whoop, that's the wrong one. I'm going to take a little bit of Bane Blade Brown, and I'm just going to get all the dirt painted in that. And I have not done this painting in front of a camera, that is, in a very long time. So this is going to be fun relearning how to do that. Oh man, my hands are kind of shaky. So I'm watering down my Bane Blade Brown just a little bit, and we're going to try to get through this pretty quick. I'm not being particularly careful. That water glass. I'm still situating my work area a little bit. There we go. And I'm not worrying too hard about things like the rocks, because what we're going to do is after we get our initial colors down, that's not nearly enough paint there. Once we get our initial colors down, we're going to pick out a few of the rocks and paint them in varying additional colors. Let's see, how's that focusing? There we go. May have thinned my brown a little too much. It's not applying very well, but that's fine because next we're going to use a shade, and that shade is going to take care of all those recesses. There we go. So that cover is good enough. Next we're gonna take our Agrax Earthshade, and I'm just going to use the same brush that I was using, which is this generic small round brush. I'm going to take that, load it up, and just really go to town here. There we go. So that's going a long way to make up for the very thin application of the Bane Blade Brown. Now, I don't know if it's picking up on the camera, but I'm definitely kicking off some of the rocks and the dirt, and that's okay. If we kick off too much, we'll cover it up with other things. For instance, I had some, let's just take a look at the locust real quick. I had some completely bald patches on this base. For instance, between the toes. Come on, focus. There we go. Between the toes, I just shoved a little shrub in there. Just hid the exposed base. And that took care of that. So, starting to get a sense of where this is going. All right, put the Baneblade brown away. And what I'm going to do next is a little bit of a dry brush on the Screaming Skull. I use exclusively Citadel paints, not because I think they're the greatest paints ever, but because I started with them and I'm just continuing to use them. All right, I'm gonna just get some of that Screaming Skull into this brush right here. Really get it in there, and then very lightly just scrape it outward from the center of the hex. Now, I'm going real fast here. Usually I would let that shade dry a little more, but I'm impatient. So there we go. We got one of those rocks falling off. That's fine. We've just exposed a spot to use our shrubbery. I am trying to be extra light with this dry brush just to not knock too many of those rocks off. I could have gone over with a little Mod Podge just to help seal those in. And I thought I did. I did all the basing off camera before this because we're not waiting for Mod Podge and everything else to dry that we would have to wait for. I want to get a little more dry brush on the front here. Go a little heavier. This is all sand here. Let me zoom. There we go. That's probably good. Wash that brush off real quick. There we go. And just in case you're curious, I'm using magnets because I'm a sucker for magnets in order to keep this Warhammer off. Though I think my magnet's coming. Yep, it came off. Ha! That's fine. We've got a backup. It worked fine with the locust, but I didn't do a good enough job. Ugh. Blue tack to the rescue. Oh, that must sound so good on the mic. There we go. I'm wearing my 40th anniversary Battletech shirt today, which annoyingly showed up with this spot. Just straight out of the box, it had that spot on it, like a bleach spot. I don't use bleach when I do my laundry, so I don't know where that came from. So, all right, let's go back to face. Look at that, problem solved. So now what I'm going to do is my Baneblade brown. I'm going to pick out a few odd colors. Let's start with a green. And it's a very vibrant green, warpstone, but I'm only going to use a very small amount of it. See if that focuses. Yeah, a very small amount. I'm going to really thin it out on my wet palette here. And then we're going to pick a few rocks. We're just going to add a little color to that. Look at that little guy in there. Another thing we're going to do here in a second, once I pick out a few rocks, is we're going to use dirty down moss. And we're going to just apply that to the sand. But we'll get there in a second. Next, I'm going to take a little Fenrisian gray. Hope I'm saying that right. I always question my pronunciation of things that I've never heard said aloud, only read. And when we mix that in with the Bane Blade, water it down again, that's gonna get us a nice cool gray color. There you go. Hope you can see that okay. Same deal, we'll pick out a couple of random rocks. Yeah, that looks good. And then one last thing, I'm going to take Doombull Brown. Give it a quick shake. And this is a really vibrant one, so I'm actually going to mix that into my bluish gray that we just mixed. Kind of tone it down a little bit. Pick out a few more rocks. Have to relearn how to position under the camera so that I can both paint and show what I'm painting. Now, because I've been watering down these paints on my wet palette, they're fairly subtle. There we go. What I think I'll do, and perhaps what I should have done, was a little more, not a little more, was to save the dry brushing for after that. Color the rocks first, then do the dry brushing. But I didn't do that. And that's fine. If you do things out of order, you just go through, do it again. There we go. Just catch those rocks. Also could do the shade afterwards, but that I'm less concerned about. And now it has pulled everything back together. So despite all that color we added, we are still getting some uniformity. I know this is probably the most interesting part of miniature painting, but it's something we gotta do before we get to the fun stuff. So I'm going to grab my dirty down moss. There we go. Let's focus on that again and close that paint I forgot to close earlier. I think this works better at larger scales, and it's a little pricey for what I'm doing here. But I think the effect it gives is also quite nice. Oh, got a little too much there. I'm just going to get a little on the brush, and then we're going to just randomly dab in a few locations. Well, maybe it wasn't enough. Try to get between some of the rocks. Maybe at the feet here. There we go. Get a little more in the back here. We can use it in the back of this foot to get some of that bare area textured up. A little more in this patch in the center, and that'll be good. Yeah, that's probably good. And going back to the locust for a second, I think you can see all that vibrant green is the dirty down moss. I feel like it does a nice little grass effect for this scale. All right. Close that up, put it to the side. It's got quite a smell to it. Pretty strong. And that is all we're doing for the base. The only other things I'll be doing is going to happen after the rest of the painting. So now it's time to get into the actual color, which is, that's why we're here. So, for the Lyran guard, what I used on this locus was a base coat of Calidor Sky with highlights mixing into Templar Guard blue. And then for the white, I was a masochist, and I used Koroks White, which is the worst paint I've ever gotten, period, any brand. But I made it work. We're going to use that with highlights of just White Scar, which is just the purest white. So I do have a vortex mixer, so I'm just going to give my base coat just a quick moment of that. Do I have? No. That's a shame. That's fine. All right. So we'll take our blue, take our basing brush, get a healthy dose on the brush, add to my wet palette. Really wish I could get everything in view, but there we go. Trying to really thin this. And then we're just going to go to town. No special technique here. We're just slapping it on. With the amount we thinned it, it's probably going to take 2 thin coats. There we go. So I'm not sure why I chose Lyran Guard. Of all the things I could have chosen. But I'm kind of happy I did. I don't play them in the tabletop at all. I needed to start painting my Battletech minis because I have so many. All of them are gray for the most part. I have a couple that aren't. A couple of urban mechs. But I've just, since the clan invasion, been going heavy in on the Battletech purchases and then just not doing a whole lot with them. Part of that is just having very few people to actually play with. All right, slowing down as I get close to the feet. In fact, I'm not going to do the feet just yet, because part of the weathering technique here is going to be mixing in that Baneblade brown to kind of get a weathering effect of like dirt mixing or covering the chassis. All right, let's see. Right about here, I think that's where we're going to stop the blue in anticipation of the white. So let's keep that going. But yes, back to what I was saying. Not having a lot of people to play with, and that's namely, for the longest time, it was just my brother, really. And he is incredibly inaccessible most of the time. I'd say, hey, bro, let's play some Battletech. And he'd be like, oh, I'm pretty busy for the next 2 months. It's like, okay, I'll check back in 2 months. Hey, bro, let's play some Battletech. I don't know, bro, I'm pretty busy for the next 2 months. It's like, my bro, what are you doing to me? Bring that back down here. Gotta really make sure you get those hard to reach places because you never know when someone's gonna look. All right. It's actually I've actually been getting really into the mini painting in a big way recently. It's always been a thing I liked, and I started this channel with the idea of, doing it all the time. And then the motivation just was difficult to get because I wasn't actually playing the games. Blue Tech, you're failing me. Come on. I recently made some new friends who are really into these games, and now I'm playing like all the time, and it's a great thing. And I didn't grow up with like game stores or anything. That's just what wasn't a thing I even knew of. So by the time I'm an adult and actually playing these sort of games, it's like the idea of just going in and playing games with strangers was, I don't know how to do that. I'm not emotionally equipped for that. But these new friends, they do it. And then they brought me in, and now I can do it. Actually gives me imposter syndrome sometimes. Like, am I a gamer? I was showing this friend Battletech because he had actually not played it before, and I had. So we met up at our local game store. And we're going through the rules. It had been a while since I'd played, so I'm having to look things up too. And it's just having someone who's clearly a regular at the store walk up, and he just knows all the rules, no matter how niche the rule is, just off the top of his head. And then he's asking me, oh, which models of the blah 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 mechs did you take? Models, loadouts, the 3-letter number nomenclature. I said I wasn't going to do the feat, and then here I am doing the feat because talking and painting at the same time is not trivial. And him just knowing like all of those nomenclatures off the top of his head, it's like, am I really a Battletech fan? Maybe not. Of course I am. All right, I need more paint. Look how quickly we go through that. Gotta really make sure these Citadel pots are closed. There we go. Make sure our brush isn't too heavily loaded. not going to worry too much about the gun because that's going to get painted in metallic. And yes, I will be using a metallic for that because I am not yet educated in the non-metal metallics. I like the look of it, but I haven't attempted it yet, and I have a harder time wanting to do that for the first time live. Don't judge me. Every once in a while, I like to just rinse off my brush. Don't care if it's completely paint free, but I don't want to let the paint sit on it too much. Blue tack. I wish I had glued the magnet on properly, because the blue tack is not ideal. Alright. Oh, this mech is so much bigger than the Locust. It's taking so much longer. Go. Gotta reach all of those hard to get areas. Make sure the camera can actually see what I'm doing. There we go. All right. Almost done with the first coat. I'm going to need to figure out like a music situation before I do this again. The dead space makes me feel bad. Gosh, holding the camera or the mini under the camera is tough. There we go. Ah. I'm not worrying too hard about the inside of this because that's going to get painted in other ways. All right. There we go. Brace our hand. Try and get some brush control. If I can avoid getting too much onto the left torso, I would like to. Got a little bit there, which I'm going to clean up. So I think that's our first coat. Definitely going to have to go back and do a little more. A second coat, I should say. This one's a little thin, but that's to be expected. That's just how painting minis are. So, I'm going to clean my brush. Get to a good starting point. Let's see, I don't think the palette needs to be there. Oh, I need to learn better posture. It's killing my back. All right. Just a quick comparison. I like to track progress, but anytime I start painting a mini, the first 30 minutes or so, I often find myself looking at it and just saying, this is looking terrible. What am I even doing here? But it's really a trust the process situation. Once you start getting those shades and highlights in, everything really comes together. And you just got to trust that's going to happen. Currently, if you're coming here from Blue Sky, which I'm on, by the way, just at Tabletop Ackley at Blue Sky, or however those URLs work. I've been posting my Beast Snaga orcs, because that's what most of my time has been spent painting. I must have like 40 hours logged on painting a single 10-boy squad of orcs. Don't let me play horde armies. But I've been experimenting with a bunch of different colors for the skin tones. And when it was just the initial base colors, there's a whole bunch of, I don't know how this is going to work. It's not looking very good. But I have some right here. Because this is the first one I painted. Which I'm very happy with. There's definitely the case of when I go after the fact, when everything's settled down, okay, my highlighting on the leather is not the greatest. The bone, kind of sloppy. The scars in particular, I'm not happy with now, but I'm also not going to go back and touch this up because I like to keep little checkpoints of my skill level. Don't like the, what is this, fur, scales? I don't know. Don't like that. But those are little things that you just improve over time. So, next I tried a brighter skin tone. There we go. Because with the first one, with the knob, I was going off what the Citadel app claims to be the orc colors, which is completely wrong. That app is lying to you actively. So I did some research, found some other skin tones, and this is like the second unit I completed in the same, or the second model I completed in the same unit, and there are just huge jumps in quality. I'll bring that closer to the camera. And it's just, as long as you're taking a moment, looking at what you did, evaluating, and adjusting, you can actually improve quite quickly. Here's one of the work in progress ones. Again, if you're on Blue Sky, you've seen this already. But what's this? An orc that doesn't have green skin? My God. But yeah, I'm starting to get a good feel for how I like to paint skin tones. Regardless of the color, just the way I highlight. It's a very sketchy style, but I kind of like it. Focus! There we go. This one's still work in progress. I hope you can tell. But we're not here for orcs. We're here for Battletech. And Battletech we shall have. Because I was in the middle of painting coat number 2 of this Celadar Sky. I think the worst part is I do not know if the camera is even picking up that a second coat was necessary. Let me see. Really look at it. How obvious is it that it's splotchy? I don't know. I don't know where the metal starts and the blue starts, so we're just going to cover that. For all I know, you're just watching me smear my brush over already painted battle mech. And the camera just cannot figure out where it wants to be. But I can't switch to manual because then I'm going to move my hand in the wrong place and it's just forever going to be out of focus. Focus. It's a conundrum. It doesn't help that I'm using a still photography camera for this. Excellent camera for that purpose, but for video, it's better than a lot of possible solutions, but it's not ideal. There, maybe it's a little more obvious under the armpit. Yeah, you can see how it's still kind of gray there. Trust me, there's a point to this. There's also, depending on how much work you're going to put into things like shades and highlight, it almost doesn't matter if you do a second coat. Like, it's better to start from a good place to work from, but you can almost compensate later depending on your techniques and what you're doing. I'm almost getting to a point where I'm going to call this blue done. I'm not looking for perfection here. Let's get under this hip a little bit. Focus. Yeah, there we go. Boop. Let's see, we'll leave the cockpit how it is. All right, let's address that foot. After I get this little spot. I see you. You thought you could get away from me. I'm almost not scrutinizing the right side of the blue enough because I keep thinking, oh, that side's going to be white, so I don't need to look at it. But that's causing me to neglect things. All right. I think that'll do it. I say as I continue to brush. I keep eyeing little spots. Okay. All right, we're going to want to look at the palette for this next part because what we're going to do is address this foot. My weathering technique, we're going to take this Kaladar sky and we're going to add a little bit of our Baneblade brown. And that's what we're going to paint the foot with. We're going to be careful here, take our time to avoid getting too much on the ground around the foot. But again, it's not the biggest concern if we do. Because at the end of this, we're going to be using essentially just dirt colors anyways. Balmex, they kick up a lot of mud, a lot of dirt. And I'm actually going to take some random color, really mix it in, get it wet, and then I'm going to just splotch. Camera, I want you to see this. There we go. We're going to just haphazardly splotch on the lower part I love being able to do this. It's one of the advantages of this particular handle. There we go. Splotch that very thinned down color. All right. Let's take a little more of our brown. What is this? Get out of here. Look at this. Look at this garbage. This is why people don't like the Citadel pots. And I get it. I get it. Doesn't mean I'm going to transfer my paint. All right. There we go. We got more mix. Going to add some water to this. I want this to be very wet. All right. And then we're just going to splotch it again. Being careful not to hit our dirt too much. Nope, I almost threw my brush. There we go, get the underside here a little bit. There we go. Now the last thing we're going to do, because the Baneblade Brown kind of brightened it up a bunch, we're going to take a little bit of Rhinox hide. Just a little bit. We're going to darken this back down. Get that blue back in here. Get all that blue back in here. Come on, blue. Get in here. There we go. And that'll darken it back. I'll steal a little brown from over here. Yep. All right, one last time. It's not enough brown. It's not dark enough. That's fine. We just add more and adjust. It's one of the things I like about the wet palette is it just gives me forever to do this. As long as I add more paint, there's more to use. All right, there we go. That's close to what I wanted. And again, I'm thinning this quite a lot, so if we want to add some above, we can. And it'll, as it dries, thin out. There we go. Add some to the underside here. Really splotch it on. This is a working person's battle mech. It's going to get dirty. All right. We'll let that be. Whew. Set that down. All right. I need to take a sip of my water. Oh no, I haven't had my text open, and someone left me a message. Cokers, hi, I'm trying to decide which 40k army to start with. My heart says Astra Militarum, but having to buy so many miniatures and paint them scares me. I started with Astra Militarum, and let me tell you, like, none of them are painted. Oh man. I have been sitting on just green units forever. I love how they play, though. I love how customizable they are. I do really enjoy them. I think they have some of the... something about it being more grounded than other armies I really enjoy. So they're not trying to get my thoughts together. I think they're an easier army to kind of get your head around. Like it's you move and you shoot, and obviously it's not that simple. But for a first army, I do think it's actually not a bad one. I also have orcs, which I showed earlier. These are horde armies. Like your buying and painting question, they're both terrible for that. So many to paint. Thankfully, the Astra Militarum, they're simpler to paint. I know some people complain about the new Cadian shock troops having too many details relative to the old ones, but I think they look so much better. But yeah, they're relatively simple to paint compared to some other armies, though. Of course, if you want simple, go get some Blueberry Space Marines. Not to say that those armies don't have models that are more difficult to paint. But yeah, Astra Militarum, I think it's fine. And to be clear, I'm not a 40k expert. Or you could get something like Tyranids, where you take like 3 colors and you're done. Boom. Obviously, you can go more detailed than that, but those are also kind of the paint scheme is as complicated as you want it to be, or as simple. So, all right. Let's see. All right. Apologies. Let me get back into this. Let me do this. Well, answering that has given the feed a moment to dry. I'm sorry, that probably sounded terrible. My sparkling water. Okay. This is my least favorite part, specifically because of the paint I'm using. Corax white. I mean, just look at this. Look at this. That's horrible. What even is that? I spent 5 minutes yesterday really shaking that up. And let me bring this in so you can actually see what the heck I'm doing. I've got the vortex mixer. And what I did, I took my terrain spreading tool. You hear that? You hear that? I took my terrain spreading tool and I stirred the crap out of this because it was basically just a chunk. And this was sealed correctly. This is just how this paint works. And then I did this for probably 5 minutes. And I even added some matte median to try and not thin it out, because that's not what matte median does, but just to try and add some more moisture into the paint. There, and this is probably usable now. I need to fix my Stream Deck so I don't have to tab into OBX. Let's take a look. Usable. Not great, but it's usable. That's what we wanted. All right, so let's take just a bunch of that. Now, you may be wondering, hey, that's not white. Why do they call it white? Well, because if you paint your whites using a pure white, you don't give yourself anywhere to go with your highlights. You want to be close to white, but not quite white. Of course, the consistency of this, I have no idea what consistency it's supposed to be. Maybe if I bought another pot of it, I would be able to get a better idea. But I'm not going to do that when my experience with the first one is so bad. But you see, even though it looks gray on the palette, once you're applying it, I used what is this? Gray Sear, Citadel Gray Sear to prime the model. And you can see the Koroks white is substantially brighter. In fact, contrasted to the blue, it does look white. And that's what we're talking about. It is close enough to white that it reads white, but still gives us room to highlight. You know, it's all about contrast. Something I have been practicing and trying to boost is my highlights. Because it's that contrast. What is this? There's like a string of something in here. Get out of here. Get. Highlights, yes. When you see those excellent miniatures that people post where it's just like, oh god, they spent 160 hours painting this one dude and he looks so good. What you're going to notice is the contrast plays a big role in why it looks so good. The darks are dark and the lights are bright, you know, shadows and highlights. And the more you can get that contrast while feeling natural, it's going to pop and you're going to think, oh, that looks amazing. And that's why I've been trying to practice with. In fact, I'm going to interrupt myself for an example. All right, let's take a look at these. So, you know, I've got these Astra Miltarm, and gotta put my finger there. You know, I like these. I think they're improvements over everything that came before them in my painting. Definitely things I would want to improve. But what I'm not happy with these is they feel dark. Like I don't have the highlight popping the way I want. And then we take something more recent, like this orc, and something I really focused on was having, you know, those brighter highlights. Like even though the purple is a very dark color, I've got this very bright highlight on it. The skin is much brighter, you know, these scars really bright. And I feel like shadows are going to be shadows just naturally through how light works. But if your highlights are too dark, they're never going to be bright enough. No matter how much light you shine. I mean, obviously, you throw it into the sun, it's going to be plenty bright. But shadows are forgiving, highlights are not. And I feel like you need to make it pop more to really bring out those highlights. Even with the locust, some of these highlights, I'm happy with this, but I feel like I could make the highlight pop just a little more. Let's, you know, I said I wasn't going to touch it, but let's, just real quick. I'm going to take my little detail brush. I'm going to take just the tiniest bit. What was this? Fenrisian Gray. Okay, add a little bit of my, what is this color? Temple Guard Blue. Okay, mix that in. That's not the one I'm painting. There we go. And we're just focus. We're just going to add a little more, just right on the tip. Very gently. Add a little to this panel. Very gently. It's subtle. But just adding that little bit of extra pop, I feel like, can go a long way. I was hoping the camera picked that up correctly. So, but what was I doing? I was base coating. We're still on the base coat. I feel like I've been here for an hour already, and we're still on the base coat. This is why I can't do horde armies. If you're still here, why? Self-deprecation is my favorite sort of humor. But yeah, today's stream, again, this was very impulsive. I didn't plan this. I had other plans and I had to cancel so that I wouldn't be a super spreader in a public event. But as a result, today's stream is very much trying to get over the technical hurdles. I'm worried I'm going to play this back and all it's going to be is... you know, my voice is bad enough without mic problems. I mentioned at the start of the stream, probably when I first started the channel, I did do a live stream. You can still watch that if you want to. I don't even remember what I was doing. It had to do with my Beast Snaga boys, who are the ones I'm currently painting. You know, that was like 3 years ago when I first bought that Beast Snaga army box when they were a new thing. And I think I was just talking about them and assembling. I don't remember. But I do that, go on, I don't know, probably a year before trying again. And during that stream, which you can't really call it a stream, I spent an hour painting Zodgrod, whatever his name is, the guy who leads Gretchen. Come on, focus. Let's go. There we go. I was painting him for an hour. I was feeling good. I was having great conversations with myself. And then I look over. And while I had started sending stream data to YouTube, I had not actually sent the stream live. I had spent an hour talking to myself and nobody else. Like I'm doing now, except I know that this is actually streaming. An hour talking to myself, and it wasn't even archived because I had never hit go live. I had hit go live in OBS, but at the time that did not also start the stream on YouTube. I hit live at that point, talked about how dumb a mistake that was, but at that point, all the momentum was gone. So I stopped the stream, deleted what little bit I had sent live, and then kind of disappeared for a bit. And the next time I tried streaming was right after I had transitioned from Windows 11 to Arch Linux. I use Arch, by the way. I hear that's the thing you're supposed to say when you use Arch. And that was largely driven by Microsoft popping that little co-pilot button in the taskbar and me just not wanting to have... God, keeping this camera in focus is so hard. Just not wanting to have anything to do with their AI garbage. So I moved to Linux. And let me tell you, getting all the stream software set up on Linux, Arch specifically, was not a great time. I could do it. I'm a software engineer by trade, so like I have experience getting crap to work on other crap. But it is not a trivial thing. And the next time I tried streaming, some random driver issue occurred with my audio interface. And even though I was getting levels from the audio interface, it was actually using my laptop's integrated microphone at just the worst levels. So like 30 minutes into the stream, I check my audio and it is just awful. And then we go to today. I wonder what crazy technical issue I'm going to have when I watch this back today. Maybe, I mean, my issues keeping in focus certainly aren't helping. Maybe I'm going to watch this back and it's going to be 3 frames per second the entire time. Who knows? One issue with painting a very light gray on top of another light gray is it can be a little tricky to tell, have I painted that already? I have a cat at the door yelling at me. Part of me thinks I should let the cat in. But then I'll just be yelled at from right next to me instead of a distance. Because I know what they want. They're hungry. They're always hungry. But dinner is not for another 2.5 hours, despite what they'll tell you. So I'll let them in. They'll be happy about that. And then they'll yell at me right here. All right, we gotta get this missile rack. All right. What a useless thing to say. All right, what am I talking about? I don't know. I just wanted to say something and all right came to mind. Trying to fill the dead silence. I can't tell. I think I've painted this already, but I can't tell. All right. There's a few spots I need to get a smaller brush for. Nope, that's White Scar. Where did my... There it is. My Koroks white. Boop. Get a little more. And we're going to do... I really like being able to hold the model like this with this particular grip. The Citadel holder has its strengths, but this is not one of them. There we go. Just trying to catch out some of the more obvious stuff. It doesn't have to be perfect, because once you've got the colors separated, what you can do, and what I will do, is go down the line with a dark color just to really, cut the difference between the two. Anything on the back that we need to clean up? Yeah, we got a spot here. I also did not thin the white before using the smaller brush, so it might make it a bit easier to tell how our coat is. There we go. I can just feel the blue tack giving up. Yeah, here we go. All right, got a little blue showing through here, so we'll just knock that out, though I think that's going to end up being metal anyways. This is going to be real hard to show, but there's, under that torso, just a little bit of blue. I can't see what I'm doing, but that's fine. We're just going to try and get that. And then definitely under the armpit, a whole bunch of stuff I haven't painted. Get my hand out of the way. Focus. Okay. I'm not using correct techniques to brace my arms. Because if I do that, you won't be able to see anything. And like, isn't that why you're here? Because you want to see what I'm doing? Either to learn what to do or learn what not to do. The heck's this guy doing? He doesn't know what he's doing. Don't listen to him. Let's see, right in this hip joint. Right there. Yeah, that little bit of blue. I might paint that metal, actually, so we're not going to worry about that. One thing I wish I had done before I primed this was actually take some time and clean up all these mold lines, because they are a pain to work around. When I was, let's see, I have about 8 battle mechs that I just quickly threw some texture on the bases and some prime paint on, because I was very suddenly playing my first game in literally years with a friend who didn't have any mechs, and I didn't want to bring completely bare plastic. So without thinking about mold lines, I just threw a bunch on and went. And now I'm regretting that. Because the mold lines aren't particularly bad on the Warhammer. Right here at the ankle, it's a little bad. But it's nothing like the Atlas that I just cleaned up. All right. We need to do a little bit of weathering with the base coat. So once again, I'm going to, first I'm going to put a little more of our white down. And then I'm going to take a little bit of our Baneblade brown again. We're going to mix that in just a little bit. There you go. You can see that. Thin it a little bit with some water. Oh, my cat's really yelling at me now. How cruel of me. Why did I pick that up? That's not what I need. And once again, we're going to take that thin mix. We're just going to kind of dab it on. Getting a little bit on the underside of the upper portions of the leg. Because we have a base of white on this one, it's less of a concern if we get some on our base. There we go. I need to stop saying, there we go. That's not helpful. All right. Boop, boop, boop. That's not any better. Though perhaps more whimsical. Boop, boop, boop. Okay. I do not feel like I had enough paint there. I actually went to great lengths to learn how to stop saying when I'm trying to think of what to say. And I'm pretty good at it for the most part. But then you hear me say stuff like, there we go. And how is that any different? It's not. All right, I'm going to take a little more Bane Blade. Really thin this time. I'm going to add a decent chunk of water. Just because the wet palette's wet doesn't mean it has enough water. All right, and here, get this string off my brush. We're gonna dab that on the feet and on the lower parts of certain things. Very heavy on the feet. And again, because it's thin so much, it's gonna not be so vibrant once it dries. Boop, boop. So we can afford to go a little up. I think the inner ankle, focus? The inner ankle is somewhere I've been neglecting. Let's get a little more on that. All right, and then as we did on the blue, we're gonna take just a little bit. I think we'll use, no, just, again, just a tiny bit of Rhinox hide, just a darker color. And I mean a tiny bit. I'm going to start with that, see how we feel. Yeah, like it does not take a lot to really completely change the color here. But again, very thin. And now we're going to be very sparing. Another good way to get like a nice dust effect on the feet is to dry brush. A nice dry brushing can very effectively get this dust feel just because of the way the paint actually applies. There we go. All right, so now we've got dirty legs. Look at that. Let's see. Just compare again. Obviously, we don't have the scratches yet, but I'm largely following the same process. Righty. So the next thing I want to do, I think, is to catch out all the metal. I don't want to do any sort of highlighting or shading until all the colors are kind of added in. That way, if I mess up, it's easier to fix. So let's go ahead. For this, I'm using Iron Warriors. There we go. This is another paint that's kind of given me some issue. Not as bad as the Corax, but if it'll focus, you can see it's fairly chunky. I'm also not convinced they filled it correctly, but that's whatever. Because it's so chunky, I just thin it out on my palette. Make it go a long way. All right, we'll start with the obvious stuff, like the barrels. Which, you know, you could do the barrels in the same color as the rest of the mech. But I kind of like the metal to it. Let's see. Be a little more careful. We'll fix it if we have to, but if we don't have to, that's better. There we go. I hope anyone watching has their own excellent hobby stuff to work on. I would love to hear what other people are working on right now. Oh, my cats are so upset. But they have 2 hours left. 2 hours before food. I almost considered calling the stream mandatory hobby time. But I'm not here to tell you what to do. There we go. I clean my brush frequently when working with the metal paint because I find that the metal bits are terrible for my brushes. And I'm bad enough with my brushes without external factors making it worse. I did not get nearly enough paint on this palette. There we go. That's fine. Stop saying there we go. It's not useful. Say something meaningful. That's what people want to hear. Also, keep your camera in focus. I'm curious if the mic picks up the camera focusing. It is fairly loud from my perspective. Again, not a film camera. But it does its job. All right, don't ever be afraid to have references. I'm sitting here thinking, what should I be painting metal? Well, look it up. See what other people do. For instance, I've got the Clan Invasion Kickstarter box art right here. That's what I'm using as reference. Look at that guy. Isn't that a great reference? Right where he belongs. Under Clan Jade Falcon's foot. Get wrecked, kid. Using that beautiful reference. Well, let me get a little more paint on the palette first of all. Really looking forward to listening back to this later and seeing if my cats are getting picked up. I had to lock them out because I don't need them knocking stuff off shelves while I'm doing this. All right, let's brace that. I think not necessarily the doors to the missiles but the backing for it, certainly I want in this metallic color. Focus. There we go. If we're careful, we won't have to redo the base color because we'll be able to just use highlights to hide the sloppiness. Yeah, let's do the same thing in here. A little more on the brush. Those look like sensors of some sort. So I'll have to consider how I want to paint those. There we go. Blue tack. I just thought of this, so I'll point it out. I don't know how I'm going to get the camera to focus on this, but come on. The laser, the medium laser, I do want to do the like gem coloration on the points of the lasers, but the locus in particular was not well sculpted at the point of the laser, and there's just, come on, you can do it, camera, I believe in you. I don't believe in you anymore, you're just refusing. There you go. You can see I kind of, there's just no form to it. I just had to do my best, which is all you can ever do, right? Do your best. All right. These, the lasers on the torso, those also get the metallic treatment. A little more form to these lasers. Excuse me. Not very big though. It's going to be hard to do multicolor point painting here. There we go. Gotta be very careful. Part of me considered doing the metal first. And that's definitely a valid strategy. But there's also a part of me that thinks it's easier to work from the base colors. Just going to be gentle, use a small brush, but still making sure there's plenty of paint on the brush. All right, let's approach from the backside for a little bit. Careful. Unfortunately, this particular brush does not have a very good point. And you know, it's a basing brush. It doesn't need to have a really sharp point. But I've not been impressed with it just in general. This is a Citadel synthetic, and I feel like from the moment I acquired it, I was unhappy with it. Might be a little hard to see, but it's got a hook. I'll figure out how to focus one day. There we go. I think you can see that. It's got a hook. And it has had a hook since day one. And from what I understand, that can kind of be expected with synthetic, but still frustrating. Part of me wants to imitate my cats. But because I don't know if you can hear my cats, am I just going to sound like a madman? You're not going to hear the cat, and I'm just going to go meow, meow. All right, let's get the other array of lasers. think this is the play. Just always have a hand behind the model, so the camera always has to focus on something. But it makes for some really dumb posturing. Let me show you. I'm doing this, trying to cozy up with the model, when what I really want to do is this. Like, just really get in there. Brace my palms together. I like to brace my palms together. It feels very stable. Oh, wow. The cats are clawing at my door now. It's like a fire or something. I'm gonna have to let them in just to stop that. Go do that real quick. I'm still here, opening the door. Oh, how's it already that time? Scoot, scoot, scoot. You don't want to see my ugly face. Let's get that camera back in. I open the door. The cats walk in a little bit and then immediately get bored. Oh, what? No food? Walk off again. There we go. Yes. Definitely need to figure out some music. Royalty free. Just for my sake, too. I don't want to have to listen to myself. Kidding? My opinions suck. No one should be subjected. I'm not even holding it under the camera. Look at that. So good at this. All right, that is the most obvious stuff. I think at this point it's kind of like a freestyle. Time to just look at things and say, hey, do you want to be metal? And then throw up the horns and paint it metal. Can you hear my cats? There we go, focus. They're walking around me looking for food. But I ain't got none. I am considering switching to my detail brush. This is delicate right here. If I don't want to make a mess, that is. Yeah, there we go. I'll learn to stop saying that at some point. It's not. Oh, meta commentary, everyone's favorite. Do the same thing on the back side of the joints. The actuators. Be good and sloppy, so I have to fix it up again. That's fine. Making mistakes is fine because you can always fix them up. I really think one of the key aspects of becoming good at things is to just be willing to take more time with it. All right. I think that's probably good on the front. Nothing else is calling out to me as an obvious, hey, make me metal. But the back, I definitely feel like there's more stuff on the back. But here's where it definitely feels like a free-for-all, because there's so many things that look like they should be metal, and then there's just not a clear divide between what I think should be metal and what shouldn't be. So we gotta make up the rules as we go. So, for instance, these vents right here, I think those should be metal. Those vents right there, those vents right there, thank you. Those vents right there in the center. But there's also, it just continues all the way to the head. So we're just going to pick an area and we're going to block it off. There we go. Not that I think... Oh, I just brushed all across here. That's fine. We'll fix it. But what I was going to say is not that I think many people are watching this, but if someone is, I dare you to go through and see how many times I say superfluous things like, there we go, and all right, and okay. Gotta get the interior of those vents. Yeah, that looks okay. What else? I think these exhaust port things on the SRM launcher. There we go. Now you can see what I'm talking. This guy. Camera. Thank you. Those we're gonna paint those metal as well. And again, I'm not too worried about it being a little sloppy because we can fix a lot of that during the highlight stage. Apologies for the sniffles. Again, I had to cancel plans because of this. Okay. There it is. There's another one for you added to the tally. I know I said okay earlier, but K counts. Oh, how do I hold this? What looks good? Do people get upset when the model is upside down the entire time? I'm sorry, that's how I hold things when I paint. One of the biggest reasons to even use a handle is to not get your fingers rubbing all over the model. Not because your finger oils are bad for the model or anything, but because you might scrape off paint. And yet here I am bracing it anyways, defeating the purpose because I didn't glue a magnet on correctly and the blue tack is failing me. Huh? Center? I just need to put like an X on the surface in front of me that says, here's your line of sight, hold the model here. There we go. Add that to the tally. All right, let's pick out a few more things to make metal. That looks like it should be metal. Why not? We also don't need to be too concerned with filling in the gaps completely because we're going to go in later with a wash of some sort. I think the last thing I want to make metal are these spots right here on the back of the side torsos. Hello, friend. I am painting a Warhammer from BattleTech. The colors of the Lyran Guard. For reference, this is a model I painted previously in the same style. So we're kind of trying to achieve that with this much bigger model. How are you doing today? You got anything you're working on? Need to get the rest of this metal done. I can feel my brush crying. Ooh. Very difficult to see, but I've got some fraying going on with this brush. I need to clean it a little bit right now. I'm starting to get sloppier with it. There we go. Oh, that's awesome. It's almost your birthday and you're getting orcs for 40K. I know you've only recently joined the stream, but I'm a big fan of orcs. What kind of orcs are you getting? I'm personally really into the beast snagas. There's one I recently finished painting right here, so how fortuitous. Do you already have orcs? Or is this like your first time? This looks like it should be metal. You know what? This too. Why not? Why not? You can be metal and you can be metal. Yeah, be snagas. That is what I like to see. I really enjoy beast snagas. I like their play style. Just getting close and beat stuff up. Plus, it's like, I like how we're in this super sci-fi Gretchen. Yep, Gretchen are a must in all orc armies. But I really like how we're in this hyper sci-fi setting, 40,000 years in the future, and then there's just these beast snaga orcs over here. They're like wearing loincloths and stuff. They still got tech bits. Absolutely, but I don't know, something about that archaic nature to them I really enjoy in the setting. So you got Gretchen, but the orcs you're getting for your birthday are going to like be the extent of your army. Do you know what models you're getting? Just the boys or anything else? Excuse me, I am sick and need to blow my nose. Oh, take a sip of my drink and you can stare at my ugly mug for a moment while I do so. Yeah, I'm not an expert in 40k. I've only played less than a dozen games overall, but a lot of those were with my Beast Snaga orcs, and they have just always been a lot of fun for me. Even when I lose, I feel like I'm wrecking stuff on the field. Oh, and there's my cat. I know you heard that. The ones on the Squigosaurs. Yes, the Beast Snagas on Squigosaurs. Yep. Those guys can wreck. Cat. Have you actually played before? Like with someone else's armies or anything? Or is this really your first foray? Back to the painting. I want to get the cockpit painted out. And for that, I'm going to use Barak Nar Burgundy. And now is the time where we also need to switch to our detail brush. Oh no, this kitty. All right, get a little bit of this on our palette. Well, I'm excited for you. Orcs are a lot of fun, just all around. Really enjoy them. And sounds like you're well on your way to at least a 500 point army, which personally is my favorite point count to play at. I know the game is currently balanced for, the game is always balanced for 2k, but then 1k is the minimum. But something about 500, it feels intimate. And in a way that I don't feel like Kill Team respects. Let's see. Oh, this is... I don't know if you can even see this. It's such a small little window I'm trying to paint. I love modern Battletech sculpts. But let me... Look at this little cockpit window. As soon as the camera decides to focus. There we go. Look at that little cockpit window. And that's set so far in there. Like, who? Why? I hate painting this. Why can't all the cockpits be like the Locust? Look at that. Oh, it's nice and out there. Easy to paint. Ooh, my cat is very upset. Hold on. Hold on. Nope. Nope, you're going to yell at me, so you get to be brought up here. Look at this baby. Look at that kid cat. He's hungry. You hungry? Why can't you be like your sister? Come on. Go. Be calm. I love all of my cats equally. So have you ever painted minis before? You've got all these orcs coming. Are you ready? What was I doing? I was painting the cockpit. There we go. I need a macro lens. Is this already zoomed in as far as I can go? Yeah, almost. Need a macro lens because I doubt I'll be able to get this on camera at all. Assuming I can even get it in focus. All right, load my brush so it doesn't dry off too quickly. There we go. Oh no, now the sister is yelling too. I just have two angry cats and their dinner is not for another hour and a half and there's nothing I can do about this. All right. I'm just taking a moment to kind of see where we are. You know, this is kind of at a point where if we wanted, we could just take a wash, put it in all the recesses, and you could be happy putting that down on the table playing with that. And no one's going to complain. Of course, that is not what I'm looking to do. I'm going to clean up a little bit of my white. Your profile picture is the first model you ever painted. Well, let me take a look at that. Oh, you know, for the first model you've ever painted, that's actually really good. Yeah, I'd be extremely happy if that was the first model I ever painted. In fact, I can go grab the first model I ever painted. But before I do that, let me use the paint that I put on my brush so I'm not just getting paint all over, dried to my brush. Let's clean this up, clean that up. Yeah. Oh no, I said even after all the talk about learning how to not say That's fine. Gotta bring this chat window back up. Where'd my chat window go? There it is. Yeah, just a little more in this recess right here. Again, I'm not worrying too hard about the recess because I'm going to use a dark color to do the lining of the recess. And that's going to help increase the contrast there. Make things stand out more. And then we've got that right there. That might take 2 coats to fix. Yeah, that's how you do it. Watch lots of videos. Um, Let me go grab my first model. Huh. Huh. I'm still here. I'm just away from the camera. All right. Oh. So, I kind of have two firsts. I have my absolute first, which is this. The Commando Battletech. This was in 2007, 2008. I found the Battletech introductory box set in a random game store. I had been playing the Mech Warrior games since I had memories, right? I was like 4 when Mech Warrior 2 came out or something, and I've been playing it ever since. But it wasn't until I was in college that I learned there was actually a tabletop game that the Mech Warrior games were based on. That's just how disconnected I was from like the tabletop scene. So I found the box set and I knew nothing about painting miniatures. I just bought some random paints in a craft store. No thinning or anything. I just threw it on. I was like, yeah, camo. This is going to be cool. And you know what? At the time, I was totally happy with it. Because I didn't have social media to compare everything I did. Look, I didn't even prime this. I just started painting directly onto it. Come on, camera. And so, it's really been rubbing down, particularly in like the fist. But yeah, all around the base, it's all been rubbing down. And then I just kind of got disconnected from miniatures for a long time. Like I learned things like Dungeons and Dragons in the interim, and I did a lot of kind of RPG games, but I didn't pick up. Battletech was on a lull for years, and I didn't pick up 40K until a couple of years ago, and that's where my second first came in. So that's this guy. This is my first 40K mini, and before painting this, I actually did do a bunch of research. I bought proper paints. I learned like, oh, what's dry brushing, which I did a ton of on this model. So I still didn't know to clean up like mold lines. I can get that showing here. So that's pretty not great, but this was my first. I'm trying to learn how to do this kind of mini. And then, this guy is probably a good estimate of where I am currently. Still plenty of stuff to improve. And I am improving, like, even just, these guys painted in the same unit. I finished this guy and immediately started painting this guy. And if you compare, come on, focus. There we go. If you compare the scars on the left with the scars on the right, it's obvious the improvements. Plus, I think the skin looks a lot better on the one on the right. But that's like the third time I've pulled those guys out this stream. I'm supposed to be paying a Warhammer. But yeah, just watching videos, you can learn so much. And then also just make sure to, review your own work. When you're done with something, take a moment, kind of evaluate what went well, what didn't go well, what can you try in the future. You asked how old I was. How old was I for what? I didn't see your message until just now. Let's see. What am I even doing right now? I'm supposed to be painting this. I think we're going to fix some of the blue real quick. Get out the basing brush. For the very first one, that was just starting college. So probably 19-ish. Which is like, there were, even at that time, there were already people who were like 13 just crushing me, just doing way better. But again, I wasn't on social media yet back then, or I had only recently been, but we're talking like MySpace, right? It's not like the current era with Instagram and everything, and you can see what everyone else is doing. So I had nothing to compare my own stuff to. Fix that up. Just do a little touch up. I think I rubbed off some paint here. This is why we try to use handles to not rub paint off. But again, I keep bracing the model with my hand and messing things up for myself. Careful. Yeah, see, there's so much information available to you now, and it's so easy to get at. By the time you're the age I was when I did my first mini, you're going to be entering Golden Demon contests and stuff. Like even now, I think I'm a average painter. Part of that is after that first 40K model I just showed, I didn't actually do a lot of painting. When I started the YouTube channel, I got really excited for a little bit, but again, I didn't have people to play with. So I kind of fell off of it. That's part of why I haven't posted a video in probably like, what is it, like 2 years? I don't remember exactly. You got to engage with the hobby. Yeah, dude, you focus, you're going to be a great painter. I mean, the fact that you had the intuition to go look stuff up before starting, I think puts you ahead of a lot of people. Certainly ahead of me. You've got a good start. Like, I wish... I'm trying to think when I started guitar. I wish I had started guitar at a younger age. I think that was like closer to 16. But if I had started at 13, I think I would have kept with it more. I think there's just definitely this period when you're young where if you stick with something, you will slingshot ahead. I'm just doing random touch-ups now. I think what I want to move on to is lining. That is to say, kind of filling in all these recesses. Now, the easy thing to do for that is to use a wash of some sort. I'm holding Agrax Earthshade, but non-oil would probably be better for this. But I'm a masochist, and that's not what I'm going to do. Instead, what I'm going to do, we used Kaladar Sky for our base, so I'm going to go with a darker blue, in this case Dark Reaper. And I'm going to manually create not a wash, but definitely a thinned down. In fact, I was thinking about using a little bit of Rhinox hide, just like a 4-to-1 mix, just to make it a little grungier. But I'm actually not going to do that. So I'm adding water to my paint to thin it down considerably. And then I'm going to run my brush a few times to kind of offload it. And now what we're going to do is just hunt those recesses and start filling them with paint. So hopefully you can see that. We just want to be a little gentle. And if it's okay when we're doing this, you see I got a little on the top of the panel too. That's okay because we're going to be highlighting later and it's going to get covered up again. I feel that. Playing D&D, 40K just speaking to you. 40K, it spoke to me as well for a long time, but I just wasn't in a position to financially commit to it, which is weird because it's not actually... I wanted to say it's not that expensive, but that's, of course, you know, that depends on where you are. It's a perspective thing. It's when I compare it to some of my other hobbies, it's not that expensive. We'll say that. You know, thank goodness I'm not into cars. But it is a lot up front. I know, you're laughing. It's for you, yes, it's probably extremely expensive. You're what, 14 you said? I'm a grown ass adult. I work for a living. I have, for the moment, money that I can spend on hobbies. Oh, I'm being real haphazard, picking out where I want to line, just being real gentle, trying to get the point of the brush between the panels. Hopefully, you know, just looking at this, it's more obvious what we're trying to achieve here. Well, you're being indoctrinated into capitalism. You need a job so you can spend money on the living. I get it. We've all been there. There we go. It's okay if we're a little clumsy in spots like this because that additional shading is actually pretty beneficial for what we're trying to get. Yeah, somehow I avoided all the expensive hobbies in high school. You know, no Magic the Gathering, no 40K. It's not like I didn't hang out with people who played those games. I was the kid who went home and was on my computer for the entire evening. So I just didn't participate in the physical stuff. Okay. I also love Lego, but for some reason, around the age of 13, I just kind of stopped. And I mean, you can see I've I've picked it back up. I've got the castle, I've got all the space stuff over here. I've got stuff throughout the house. I picked up Lego in a big way probably 6ish years ago, but for some reason, I don't know if I just wasn't liking the sets that were coming out. I just stopped doing Lego for a long time. And then one year I got the lunar lander for my birthday. And it just all came back to me. And of course, Lego knows exactly how to pander to me. All these gorgeous sets that are coming out now for adults, priced for adults. They know. It's a little unfortunate that the Star Wars Lego sets are such a cash cow, because I would love for more kind of just generic space sets. And it's not that they don't exist, but there aren't a lot of them because Lego doesn't want to galvanize its various themes. All right. I think we're hitting a point where things are like starting to come together. Like, just look how much that lining helps. It's extremely tedious, but the impact it has on the overall presentation of the model is immense. The shading of the recesses is, in my opinion, more important than the highlights, which is completely counter to what I said earlier in the stream, that making your highlights pop is how all the best painters make their stuff impactful. I think the two ideas can live together. What are you trying to achieve? You know? I could be a little more systematic about this. But I'd rather just pick out random places. Focus. Any suggestions on paintbrushes? I'm going to reiterate, I'm not an expert, but I've been really enjoying this brush that I'm holding right here, Vallejo Pro Modeler. Like, that's got a good point. That's really good for the kind of detail working I'm doing right now. And my hands are not the steadiest, but with proper bracing and a good brush like this, I can achieve pretty fine details. You know, let's compare. I'm going to bring them out again. I'm going to bring out these orcs again. So I did this one first, and then I did this one. And I don't know if it comes off well right now, but the one on the right, I used that brush I just showed. And I was having a much easier time getting thin lines. And hopefully you can see that I had more control with the one on the right. Synthetic or Kolinsky? You know, that's an excellent question that I should probably know the answer to. I still have the packaging. Natural hair round brush for models and miniatures. So, not synthetic. This is natural hair. It doesn't say what kind of hair. Just natural hair. I hope that answers your question. But I've really been enjoying that. Earlier in the stream, I was talking about how I bought some synthetic Citadels, and they almost immediately were hooking. Don't know if you can see that. That doesn't mean these are bad, but it does kind of reduce the control. But yeah, I've been using the Pro Modeler for a little bit, and it's been doing great. And I'm not even taking great care of it. Like, I am getting paint in the... Why can't I remember the name? Is it Feral? You know, all the way down here. And I've been trying not to. I probably need to clean out my water more often than I do, and that's probably what's happening. But like, I can still get a really nice point out of this brush despite my abuse. So like, I'm sure you can see I can get that in the recess real nice. And with my Citadel brushes, I was struggling to do that same thing. Certainly with the Citadel synthetic. I haven't tried the whole line. The Citadel may very well have brushes that can do this. I just don't have them. But yeah, to the hooking problem, what I've heard, what I've read online is that can be a pretty frequent issue with synthetics. Of course, one thing I think you'll see a lot of: rinse your brush regularly. try to prevent any paint from drying in the bristles. But also, don't underload your brush. Like, just because you're trying to do a dot of paint doesn't mean only put a dot on the brush. Because if there's no volume to the paint you have on your brush, the paint's going to dry before you ever have a chance to actually apply it. And then you're just going to ruin your brushes faster. Whereas if you load the brush up, you're going to have more control and a larger window to do what you're trying to do. It's kind of this balance that you have to figure out. Because when I say load the brush, I don't mean glob it all on and just go, because then you're not going to have control. Like, there's this balance of, I need the bristles to have paint in them, but not to be overflowing. I don't know if I'm explaining that well. Lining looks so good, but it takes so long. Of course, the things that look good do take long. One day I'll learn how to paint quickly, if such a thing can be done. My one unit of beast snagas. Gosh, I spent probably 12 hours on the knob alone. And then I was trying to be faster with all the boys, but I'm pretty sure I have like 60 hours logged in and I'm still not done. I have one boy completely done, and everyone else is in various stages of being done. All of the skin is done. That's probably the hardest part, getting all the skin done. I gotta work on avoiding those S sounds. Doesn't help that I have a lot of gain on my mic right now, because my interface doesn't have enough juice for it. I got a pro mic and all right, well, you take care, Caden. It's a lot of fun chatting with you. If you're on Blue Sky, add me. I want to see what you paint. Just continuing the lining. I do think I'm actually going to have to wrap it up here momentarily as well. How long have I been going? 2.5 hours? That's an okay amount of time. Actually, longer than I expected. Let's see. All right. I said I was going to use dark between just to help bring out that contrast. My Reaper might have gone too thin. Or I'm possibly not loading my brush up enough. Which is certainly also a possibility. Let's just make sure we're really loading it up. Let's try getting these panels. Come on, camera, no excuse. It is okay if it's a little sloppy, because when we do the highlighting, we will fix that. Another way I could have approached this was to base it in Reaper, in the Dark Reaper, and then when applying the Calidor Sky, be careful and just paint the panels. But it just doesn't feel right to me. Let's see. Getting all these hard to reach spots, always fun. Get that. And what I'm considering doing is really watering the Reaper down and painting the bottom half of various panels to try and get a kind of a gradient going. Undecided yet. That's going to be something I have to think about. Blue tack, you're failing me. All right, here's where I wish I had cleaned the mold lines. I'm sure you can see there's a big mold line just going diagonally down here, and it's really making the lining a challenge. But again, I chose to do the lining the hard way. I could have just applied a wash. Just apply a wash to the whole model, clean up the surfaces. But I wanted to hurt myself. There we go. Blue tack. What? Ah. All right, well, that probably isn't helping. That's all the hot glue from when I tried to glue on the magnet. There we go. We'll rotate this. Press that down again. Maybe that'll hold better now. All right. Keep holding my breath like some sort of terrible sniper. Like it's going to meaningfully stabilize me. If I want to be stable, the most important thing to do is just have proper form. And I feel like that's a lot harder to do when you're performing for a camera. It's fine. It's just a different set of skills. Oh, it feels like I've lined so much, and then I look on the backside and there's so much more to line. But yeah, the lining paint also doubles as our shade paint. So it all works out. Yeah, I'm definitely realizing I need to consider where my lights are. I'm definitely shadowing my own model too much. Look at these crazy patterns that I'm holding. I don't know why I said patterns. That's not the word I was looking for. Rinse off my brush. There we go. Shade that. Get a little shade in between this. Yeah, I can tell I don't have enough paint on the palette anymore because it's really thinning out. It's still working. But I would probably be better off putting more down. All right, let's take a look. I have not gotten all the shade, but I think I'm gonna need to take a break. I mean, look at that. I wish I had a before picture to compare to, but like even without finishing the lining, that's such a massive improvement over the readability of the mech. And I'm not even at the highlighting yet. But once we get to highlighting, just, you know, really see how that pops. That's what we're going for. But you gotta get your shading done before you do your highlighting. So, unfortunately, I am gonna need to wrap it up here, I think. I actually went on probably an hour longer than I intended to, but that's fine. It was a good time. I got a lot of painting done. Doesn't feel like a lot, but it is. It was. And yeah, I will finish this up on stream another time. When is that going to be? I don't know. But if you watched this and you're interested in seeing the second half, I mean, it's whenever I do it, it's still going to be on YouTube. I'm not going to delist a good stream after I have it. But you know, hit me up on Blue Sky. That's my social now. I got rid of the other stuff. I'm all on Blue Sky at Tabletop Ackley. So follow me there. I'll probably follow you back if you post minis and stuff. I like seeing what other people do. But with that, I am going to end the stream, and I hope you had a good time. Keep working on your hobby stuff. Let me know what you're working on, and I'll catch you next time. Thanks.